How could a freeloader like you afford something like this? Danica mocked him loudly. My husband's very successful and it's too expensive for him. And you're living off your wife's income. The other customers in the store started laughing at Kevin. A couple of them recognized him as the guy who'd married into the Jones family. Why was he even wasting everyone's time pretending he could afford something so valuable? Kevin got a little peeved when he heard what they were saying. He took out his bank card and tossed it nonchalantly on the counter. Wrap it up. We'll take it. He could tell that Lily really liked the ring. Sir, we don't accept supermarket loyalty cards here. The associate sneered as she looked at his card. Everyone burst into laughter. How could he have the nerve to pull something like that? Kevin couldn't believe how foolishly the salesperson was acting. Lily, your husband is really cold. Doesn't he know how to behave in a high-end store? Danica laughed conceitedly. Nonsense, Kevin snapped at the salesperson. Just swipe it and you'll see it's good. Sir, I said that our store doesn't accept discount cards. If this is all you have, please leave. I don't have time to play games, she scoffed. The salesperson had heard what Danica said about Kevin. If all of that was true, how could he possibly buy a ring that was worth $7 million? Please call your manager, Kevin said impatiently. Sir, bringing the manager over won't help if you can't afford the ring, she scoffed. Mr. Arnold, the store's manager, had been listening the whole time. He walked over to the counter, took one look at Kevin's black card, and felt like he was going to faint. He picked it up off the counter and asked the sales associate anxiously, Where did you get this card? I'm sorry, Mr. Arnold. This man handed me a supermarket discount card, the salesperson replied as she pointed at Kevin. I told him we can't accept it, but he just wouldn't listen. Mr. Arnold rolled his eyes as he realized he needed to give his employees better training. Then he gulped as he asked Kevin, Is this your bank card, sir? What do you think? Kevin replied coldly. Kevin's directness made Mr. Arnold start to sweat. The customers who'd been laughing at Kevin quieted down when they realized that something was going on. Hurry up and swipe the card so you can wrap up the ring for my wife, Kevin ordered them. He was tired of wasting his time. Yes, sir, Mr. Arnold replied as he quickly handed the card to the salesperson. What are you waiting for? Didn't you hear what this gentleman said? But Mr. Arnold, the salesperson began to complain. There's no buts about it, Mr. Arnold interrupted her. Just swipe his card and wrap up their purchase. She took Kevin's card and swiped it into her card reader. A moment later, everyone heard the tone that told them that the transaction had gone through. They all looked at Kevin in disbelief. Danica was more surprised than any of them. She was so disappointed that she burst into tears. Clancy didn't even notice how upset his wife was. He glared at Kevin and wondered who the heck he could be. He knew that Lily's family was rich, but not rich enough to toss around this much money. Meanwhile, the store employees were still staring at the balance on the register. They'd never seen anything like it. Is it wrapped yet? Kevin urged her frostily. Yes, sir, it's ready, the salesperson replied as she handed him the bag. Her hands were actually shaking a little, she was so nervous. She just insulted an incredibly rich man and she had no idea who the heck he was. Here, Lily, if you decide that you don't like it, you can always throw it away, Kevin said flippantly. They were all shocked to hear him say that. Even Danica stopped crying for a moment. Who could be so rich that they'd talk about throwing out a $7 million ring? Every one of them was tempted to root through Kevin's trash. Hubby, you're so good to me, Lily exclaimed. She didn't care how many people were there and gave Kevin a big kiss. Just as Kevin was about to say something else to irritate Clancy, his phone suddenly rang. When he checked the caller ID, he saw that it was Phoebe Anderson. Phoebe got straight to the point. Kevin, are you free now? What's the matter? Kevin asked her tentatively. If you have time, come to the antique store on Belmont Avenue near Ravenswood as soon as you can. I think you know the place. I need your advice on something really important, Phoebe requested urgently. "Got it," he replied without hesitating. Before Kevin could finish speaking, he got a strange, overwhelming feeling that whatever Phoebe wanted him to look at was going to be very critical for him. Kevin got a very serious look on his face and said to Lily, "I have to go." Right after Kevin bought the Starry Sky ring for Lily, he got a call from Phoebe. She wanted him to meet her right away at an antique store on Belmont Avenue. It sounded very urgent. Kevin had an odd but very strong feeling that the Night King wanted him to go there. "Phoebe asked you to help her?" Lily didn't seem very pleased with the idea. She could easily understand the way Phoebe looked at Kevin. After all, he was very handsome, but that didn't mean she should let down her guard. "She wants me to check out an antique, and I really think that it's important." Kevin had an unusually serious expression on his face. "Then let's go there right away. Plus, that's a really good street for antiquing." Lily took Kevin's hand and they left the jewelry store in a hurry. Belmont Avenue was just north of the Loop in downtown Chicago. There were a lot of interesting antique shops all along the street, and Lily was hoping to have some time to look around. After Kevin and Lily parked, they walked quickly to the shop where Phoebe was waiting. As they passed the other shops, they could see a lot of interesting items in the windows. One of them even had a display that looked like a 1950s kitchen, including appliances. Lily thought it looked really chic with the pastel blue-green cabinets and salmon fridge. When they entered the shop on the corner to meet Phoebe, a large group of collectors was already there having a loud discussion. Kevin and Lily squeezed into the middle of the crowd and found Phoebe standing next to her father at the counter. Truman Anderson was negotiating with a middle-aged man in a three-piece suit. "What's going on?" Kevin glanced at the jewelry box on the counter and frowned a little. "Kevin, you're finally here." Phoebe smiled when she saw him. Phoebe's reaction made both her father and Lily extremely unhappy. "Have you discovered something unusual?" Kevin asked with a smile. "Here's what's going on. The owner of this shop has been a good friend of my father's for many years. He recently got this antique jewelry box, so he asked my father to come over and take a look." Phoebe smiled a little as she told Kevin the reason she'd invited him along. "You know how my father is. He can't walk away from a good deal. However, my father can't tell whether this thing is real or fake, so I called you." Before Kevin could reply, the man standing next to Phoebe asked, "Who's your friend?" "This is Kevin." Phoebe hesitated a little. "He's a good friend of our family, and we trust his opinion a lot." Then she turned to Kevin. "This young man is Walter Beckett." "Hello." Kevin immediately reached out to shake the man's hand. "Since Phoebe called you, that means you must know something about appraisal." A look of disdain flashed in Walter's eyes. Kevin didn't answer his question, but instead turned his attention to the gold box on the counter. It had carvings of birds and flowers on all of its sides and on the lid. "What are you doing here, Kevin?" Truman Anderson was in an especially bad mood. Whenever Truman saw Kevin or even heard his name, he thought about that awkward moment when he'd walked into his home and seen his daughter and her friends tied up. He still held Kevin responsible for it. "Phoebe called me over to take a look." Kevin reached out and touched the box, and he furrowed his brow as he studied the low-relief decorations. "Walter, what do you think about this item?" Truman ignored Kevin and spoke directly to the young man who was standing next to Phoebe. "Truman, even though the piece is very beautiful, I just don't think it's worth the price. I think you should be very careful." Walter spoke very smoothly. He didn't try to persuade Truman to buy it, but he also didn't tell him not to buy it. But Truman trusted him anyway. What Kevin didn't know was that Walter Beckett was here with Phoebe mainly because of him. Ever since the last time Kevin saw her, Phoebe had spent her days languishing at home, not really interested in anything. It made Truman sad to see his daughter like that. As far as Truman was concerned, Kevin was a bad influence. His only redeeming quality was his ability to appraise antiques. So he asked Mr. Jordan, the store owner, to invite Walter to come to Chicago and then get in touch with his daughter. "What's the seller asking?" Kevin raised an eyebrow and looked up from the box. $2 million. Phoebe stared at Kevin as she answered his question. Yes, it's worth it. You should take it. Kevin nodded his head in approval. Kevin, are you serious? Although Truman didn't like Kevin anymore, he still trusted his opinion on antiques. Of course I'm serious, Kevin replied firmly. In fact, he had more to say, but he didn't want to talk about it in front of so many people. $2 million was a lot to spend, but Truman thought that he could double his money if Kevin was right. That's ridiculous, Walter sneered at Kevin. Do you really know anything about antiques? While the decorations are very interesting, there's not enough gold just based on weight to justify a price like that. Beckett continued. On top of that, there isn't a lot of detail in the flowers. It's barely worth $200,000, let alone $2 million. You have no idea what you're talking about. The people who had gathered around them seemed to agree with his comments. One of them even whispered very loudly, I wouldn't expect any less from one of Mr. Anderson's friends. He's a perfect match for Phoebe. Phoebe was visibly upset when she heard these comments. She was afraid that Kevin would take it the wrong way. The store's owner, Mr. Jordan, also looked distressed. He'd gone through a lot of time and expense to get this antique jewelry box, and now it looked like he might stand to lose a lot of money on it. But he also knew that Walter was an expert appraiser and there was nothing wrong with what he said, so he couldn't challenge him on it. Truman nodded slightly and spoke to Mr. Jordan. My friend, I think Walter's right. Perhaps we should hold off on this purchase. Wait a minute, Kevin suddenly interrupted them. Truman, if you don't buy this item, you're making a big mistake. Truman sighed when he heard Kevin say this. I know you have extraordinary potential in antique appraisal, but you're still young and don't have enough experience. You can still make mistakes, but Walter is different. He's had intensive training and has a lot more experience than you do. The onlookers agreed with Truman's comments and nodded their heads in approval. They'd never even seen Kevin before, so how could he come in here and tell everyone what to do? So you're just going to take his word over mine? Kevin joked. It's not that I don't believe you, it's just that I believe Walter more. When Truman finished speaking, he looked over at Walter. After all, Walter was his future son-in-law. He had to show him some support in front of all these people. Truman, you really ought to take my advice. If you buy this, you'll make a lot of money. Kevin smiled as he tried to change Truman's mind. Why is this little box worth $2 million? Walter scoffed. Because it's not just a gold jewelry box. It's gilded ivory, Kevin replied casually. As soon as he said this, the whole shop suddenly became silent. Except Lily. Everyone there was an expert in antiques. They understood where he was going with this. Just take a look underneath. You can see a bit that wasn't covered in gold leaf. Of course, it doesn't make sense to cover valuable ivory with gold, but someone decided to do that. Kevin looked over at Walter and could see that he was a little uneasy. The onlookers still weren't completely convinced. After all, maybe Kevin was just trying to impress Phoebe by refuting Walter's opinion on the object. One of them even scolded Kevin. You really expect us to believe that? Leave the discussion to the real experts. Truman looked a little embarrassed as he stood there and listened to Kevin. He still didn't understand how the box could be worth so much more than Walter had said. While it had been illegal to trade in modern ivory objects since the early 70s, antiques were usually grandfathered in and completely legal. But that still didn't explain why the box had been covered in gold leaf. Honey, are you sure you're right? Lily asked in a worried whisper. Don't you believe me? Kevin answered softly. Then how can you explain this? Walter looked at Kevin like he was some kind of fool. Why the heck would someone take a valuable antique and change it so that its value would actually decrease? That's a very good question. A gold jewelry box would have some value, but it wouldn't be worth a small fortune, Kevin explained as he picked up the delicate object. But did any of you actually test the gold? Then Kevin walked nonchalantly behind the counter and took a bottle of rubbing alcohol and a rag.
What do you plan to do with that? Walter looked both irritated and confused at the same time.
Just watch and you'll see what I'm talking about. Kevin couldn't help smirking a little. What happens when you wipe cheap gilding with rubbing alcohol? The whole antique shop fell quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. Kevin put some alcohol on the cloth and wiped away the gold color from one of the corners, revealing a beautiful ivory box with incredible detail. The light coat of gold leaf had obscured a lot of the original artist's work.
How do you explain this?
Walter was still challenging Kevin, but he knew it wasn't going well for his own appraisal. It's very simple. Kevin turned to look at Mr. Jordan, who was standing there with his mouth hanging open. Then he asked, "Did you buy this from someone who'd imported it back in the 80s? "How did you know?" Mr. Jordan asked in shock. Kevin explained. In order to sneak this piece into the country, someone covered the ivory with a cheap coating of gold leaf. That wasn't really necessary for an antique, but they probably didn't know how old or valuable it actually was. While Kevin spoke, he took out a needle and heated it with a flame. Then he touched the underside of the box and continued to explain. It eventually ended up in the hands of a collector, but they had no idea that this is genuine ivory. You can see how there's a tiny scorch mark and you can actually smell the ivory a little. Whoever sold this to you knew that it was a 14th century French piece, but they never checked to see what it was really made of. They were all amazed at Kevin's explanation and began to see that his appraisal was probably correct. If you buy this box, Truman, you definitely won't lose any money on the deal. Kevin put the box back on the counter and everyone began to admire it in a new way. You really know your stuff. Mr. Jordan was very grateful to Kevin and gave him a thumbs up. If Kevin hadn't been here that day, he would have taken Walter's advice and lost the $500,000 that he'd originally spent on the item. All the antique experts in the room were astonished at Kevin's knowledge. They started to feel sorry for criticizing him just a few minutes before.
Hang on, Truman. I'll make a quick video call and get my teacher Tristan Gabriel to help you sort this out.
Walter pulled out his phone to make the call. Is this young man a student of Tristan Gabriel? They all began to wonder. They couldn't believe that one of Gabriel's students was there with Truman Anderson. He was one of the world's most foremost experts on antiques. Walter could hear what they were all whispering to each other, and it boosted his ego a little, especially since Kevin had just shown him up. Walter knew that Phoebe was still interested in Kevin. If his mentor put Kevin in his place, that would certainly make him look a lot better in her eyes. Soon the video call was connected and the face of a thin elderly man appeared on the screen. Walter, aren't you supposed to be in Chicago right now? Why are you calling me again? Gabriel's voice was a little harsh sounding.
Sir, I just appraised an antique jewelry box, but someone here said that it's worth 10 times more than my estimate.
Walter explained simply. What? Can you show it to me? Tristan was excited to see what his student was talking about. Nobody in the store could believe that Walter was able to get in touch with his renowned expert so quickly. It was very impressive. They'd all heard of Tristan Gabriel, but it was rare to see him in person, even on a video call. While everyone kept whispering to each other, Walter pointed his phone camera at the box on the counter. After a moment, everyone heard Gabriel's voice booming out of the phone's speaker. Haven't you learned anything from me? Don't you know what this is? No one had expected him to be so grumpy. But what they really wanted to know was what this expert's appraisal was. Who was right, Walter or Kevin?
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.